Welcome, everybody, to our second session on the Alma Analytics Become an Expert series. I will share the screen. Okay, so everybody should now see Alma Analytics Become an Expert, the official page we have for this webinar series. We are now on session 2, Physical Inventory and Fulfillment in Alma Analytics. Just out of curiosity, how many of you also were in the previous meeting, session 1? I'll take a look at the list of attendees and see. Okay, so it looks like the majority were in that previous meeting. So I will take that into account as I mention things. So let's jump right in. Physical inventory and fulfillment in Alma Analytics. As it states here, we're going to be talking about the default ready-to-use reports and dashboards, and also how to create new reports and dashboards, and how to take the existing reports and dashboards and change them to meet our needs. So rather than creating a brand new report from scratch, we can take the default out-of-the-box reports that we Ex Libris supply in the Alma folder and change them according to our specific needs. So without further ado, let's jump right in and let's begin. So we'll start now with the physical inventory subject area. We'll go into analytics. I'll click here, analytics, and access analytics. I will also point out, as pointed out last week, that I am looking now at the new analytics user interface inside Alma. And by the way, we're going to have a full session on March 22nd as part of the Alma 2023 Roadmap webinar series on this new interface. Is a lot more than what we're looking at right here. And I see Access Analytics. You may see in your institution Design Analytics. This, which is the old interface, we have decided in this session, in this series, the Analytics Become an Expert, to use the new interface because it's coming out in May. So there's really no reason just to continue showing the old user interface. Everybody can automatically switch to this new user interface by clicking the user icon on the top where I'm clicking here, the second from the left, and under there, there's feature rollout configuration. And here you can turn on and turn off the new analytics user interface. So that's why I see on my screen what looks like this, and you may see, in fact, I'll go into the old user interface just to show. So I will say feature rollout configuration and turn on to the old one. And if you see what I'm about to see, we'll click analytics. You may see this older user interface. And if you want to see the new interface, click the user icon on the top and then feature rollout configuration, and then turn on via the toggle the new analytics. Okay, I'm going to take a brief look at the chat here because it looks like somebody just stated that they're not hearing anything. So let's take a look here. Let's go all the way down. Someone says, am I the only one who can't hear anything? Does anybody else not hear? Okay, everybody, the other people say they do hear. So I guess we're okay there. Somebody else asks, is there a recording of the previous week's session? Yes, there is a recording of the previous week's session. If you come to just do a simple Google search here on Alma Analytics Become an Expert. If you want, you can throw in Alma Ex Libris just to narrow the search a little bit more. Here's the series. And we have lists of recordings for all 3 sessions. We're delivering this 3 times for Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, and the Americas. So you've got the recordings here, and you can access that way. Okay, and that takes all of our administrative materials already, and we can begin. Okay, so we're going to pop into analytics. I'm going to say access analytics. That's because, as you remember from last week, I have the designs analytics role. And we're going to start by looking at one of the default out of the box dashboards, which is called Benchmark Analytics. And institutions can use the benchmark analytics if they have signed up or agreed to share their anonymized data. And I'll explain why it's share anonymized data when we go look at the benchmark analytics. So I went into configuration, and then I'll go into general, and we have a data sharing profile. There's various places in Alma where data is shared. So an institution needs to confirm that they're willing to do that. And one of them is the benchmark analytics. And as it states, confirm included anonymized statistical data, and we'll see what that statistical data is. And here I have checked yes. So I have the benchmark analytics, which we're going to look at now, and we will see what is the anonymized data. So let's pop in there. I'll go to catalog. Catalog, as you recall from last week, is a way for me to see the entire directory structure as well as all of the files and folders. And we'll go into Alma, which we said last week is the default out of the box reports, a read only folder. And we'll go into benchmark, and we'll go into dashboards. And the dashboard here is called the KPI dashboard. And I'll click open. Now, this includes a lot of information about a lot of different areas, and I'm including it now because it also includes inventory information. And the benchmark analytics takes data from the same data center. So if I'm in Europe, it takes from the European data center. America is the American data center, etc. That's just as an aside because there are various laws in the world about information leaving one data center to another. We'll just leave that on the side for now. So that's why it's not including the entire Alma community of 2,000 live institutions. It's including those which are in the same data center. So let's pop over to inventory total, just as an example. And this is going to give a overview of what do I have in my inventory. And we're talking today about physical inventory. So I have in my environment here 1,854,619 physical items. How does that compare to the rest of the community? The blue line here in the benchmark analytics, the blue line is always my institution. And everything is anonymized here. There's no way you can possibly know who are these other institutions. But these pink ones are all of the other institutions. So I'm here. The blue dotted line going across is the average. So I'm way above average. I can see here that the average is 2,070,000. And I have 2 million. This is the number of bibliographic records. So I have well over the average. Then we've got electronic collections, which we won't talk about today, but it does exist here. Electronic portfolios, and we're talking today about physical items. So here we are. I have 1,854,000, as we saw here on top. And that is significantly more than the average, which is 1,693,000. Now you can see here there's one institution that has a lot more than all the others. When doing these kind of statistics, there's something called the outliers. Not outliers like lying, like not telling the truth. Outliers like they're laying way out on the sides. So if I want to get rid of those outliers, I can say here filter out, and I'll filter out, for example, the top and bottom 2%. Here I clicked it right here, filter out, apply. And let's go take a look at what's going to happen now. Here's the big one. Let's see. And now I no longer have that big, huge one at the end. Okay, somebody asked a question here. Let me scroll down. Do the totals include suppressed or canceled items? So are they bib records, not actual physical items in stock? This is physical items which are in the repository. If they were withdrawn, which is also sometimes referred to as deleted, they will not be included here. On the bibliographic records, same thing. If they are suppressed, the bibliographic records, they are included because they are a bibliographic record. But if they're deleted, they're not included. So it's those that are life cycle in repository. In analytics, there's often a filter by life cycle in repository or the measure states in repository. So these are ones that are in repository, not deleted. However, if a bibliographic record is suppressed or a holdings record is suppressed and has an item, that item will appear here. Okay, let me see if there's any other chats before we move on. When I see no results, does that mean we are not in with the sharing data? That's correct. Someone asks, when I see no results, does that mean we are not in with the data sharing? That is correct. And you can check that on your own by going into Alma and going into configuration, general configuration, data sharing profile, and seeing if you have checked yes. Now, after you check yes, it will take a month until you will have the data in the benchmark analytics. It's not immediate. It's not that you check it and then you go and you got it. Because after you check it, we need to do behind the scenes what's called the ETL, the transfer, extract, transform, load of the data from Alma to analytics. Okay, I think that covers all the questions. So let's move on. There's one more tab here I'd like to look at, and that's the inventory by month. The inventory by month is a monthly analysis of how much inventory is added each month. So let's take a look here. So if we click this, it's going a year back. So it's on February 2022. This is the bibliographic records, and if we click the play, so it moves forward, we can see each month I'm usually either average or above average, this blue line here as it moves along. Here I'm below. Here I'm exactly average. Here I'm just above average. So this is how much is added each month. And here we've also got the physical items. And again, we can click play here and it moves along by month and we can see I'm typically above average. So that's the benchmark analytics, or the part of the benchmark analytics to be more exact, that discusses the physical items. Okay, let's now, while we're already here, even though we're going to talk about all the physical inventory and then the fulfillment, while we're already in the benchmark analytics, let's look at the loans by month, which covers the fulfillment aspect of today's lecture. So again, we have the loans by month, we have the returns by month. An institution may want to know, am I having more late returns than the average? For example. So number of late returns by month. It looks like I'm just about average. This institution has a lot of late returns. These have hardly any. So it looks like I'm just about average. The blue line again is me. The dotted blue horizontal line is the average. We can click play here and see how it works out for each month. And it looks like each month I am exactly on the average. So that's the loans. And then we've also got another tab here called requests by month. And Let's let that load. So we can see here we've got 2,881 rejected patron physical item requests. This is the number of patron physical item requests. I'm significantly above average here. And then we've got a table. Here's my institution in the numbers so someone can see the actual numbers and all of the others. It's the same as this table, but it's as the graph, but it's put out into a table format. Okay, I see a question came in. How do you change the scale? I can barely see the bars as the scale is too high for the data. Inside here, you can't change the scale in a built-in dashboard. You would need to either create your own or edit the existing dashboard. However, it may be useful in your case if you say you can't see the top to get rid of the outliers, because when there's one that goes all the way up or one that goes high, then it makes all the others appear just in the bottom quarter or bottom fifth of the table. So in that case, you could filter out a larger amount of the outliers, and that will adjust the table accordingly. Okay, so for example here, exactly what I just explained. Now I got rid of the 4% of the outliers, and now I'm covering the entire table. And we noticed that when this was first developed, and that was why we added in this filter out the bottom and top percentages. Okay, so that covers the benchmark analytics. Let's now move on. I'm going to click the catalog and start taking a look at things regarding physical items. We'll start by using the out-of-the-box dashboards in the Alma folder and reports, and then we will make our own. So let's go to the physical items folder. We'll scroll down here. I'm in the Alma folder, and we're scrolling down to physical items or inventory. Inventory. We're scrolling down to inventory. Excuse me for saying physical items. And within here, we've got the dashboards. And the name of the dashboard is physical items. So let's open that and take a look at what we've got. Okay, so it starts out with a basic item count by library and location. And let's take a look, for example, at library name Central Library. So I will take the Central Library here. And if we want, we can also filter by a location. Let's take the location. I've got a location here called books and a location here called journals. Let's take the location books and apply. So it tells me, first of all, I have 309,942 items in this library and location. And I've got a detailed list of all of them with the title and the call number and the item count. It's just a basic list of what I have and how much I have by library and location. Then we can move on to the item process type. These are process types such as missing or lost. So let's go into the item process type tab. And let's say we want, again, the central library. So we'll say here that we want the central library. I think I can even just type it in here. And let's say we want missing and lost. I will say missing and lost. Put a semicolon in there. Okay. And apply. So this is going to tell me in the central library, how many items do I have that are either missing or lost? Let's get just the missing, because later we're going to make a report about the missings. So I've got 315 items in the central library with a process type missing. Now, if they've been missing for an extended period of time, it might be useful to either replace them or withdraw them. We're going to talk about that a little later when we start doing the make our own reports. And let's jump right over to the physical item usage for reading. We're not going to go through every tab here due to time, even though we have a whole hour and a half. As you know from these webinars, that's really not that much time. So this is a very useful one. The purpose of this physical item usage for weeding is to say I have items on a shelf within a specific range, or to be more exact, with a specific call number. And I want to filter by how long have they been in the library and how long have they never been loaned, or when was the last loan date, with the purpose of saying this is a topic which we don't teach here in our institution. It's not part of any core curriculum. It's taking up a lot of space on the shelves. It's been in the library at least X years, and it hasn't been loaned for at least X years. And that would make it a candidate for weeding or deselection, perhaps moving it to remote storage or perhaps getting rid of it altogether. So, for example, if I were to say here, item creation date 10 years ago, it defaults to 5 years ago. So instead of 02/21/2018, I will choose, because I want to do a search here by 10 years ago. So that would be 2013. So I'm saying the item creation date is less than or equal to 10 years ago, and it hasn't been loaned for at least 10 years. And it's not really a good idea to say last loan date is less than 10 years ago and item creation date is less than 5 years ago, because of course it wasn't loaned more than 6 years ago. It's only existed 5 years. So I'm saying here it's been created more than 10 years ago and it hasn't been loaned for at least 10 years. I'm saying central library. I'm saying location name books. And then I can take a certain section on the shelves. For example, I'll say HQ. That's a LC classification code. And if I say OK, so this is going to give me everything on that shelf where the HQ of a certain library, certain location is located. All of these items have not been loaned for at least 10 years, and they exist at least 10 years. So if this is a topic which is not part of the core curriculum or the purpose of my institution, it may be a candidate for the deselection. And we're aware there are many other factors to take into account. However, this is a significant factor. So all of these have not been loaned in quite some time. Okay, quite some time, 10 years. Let me just check the chat here and see if there's anything that's come in. Okay, I don't see any new chat, so let's move on. So that covers the physical items dashboard for what we want to show. And let's move on now to the title level overlap analysis. So we'll pop back into the catalog. And while we're going in there, I'll start explaining. The title level overlap analysis, it relates both to physical and electronic because it compares inventory of physical and electronic. So we're going to pop here into titles. I'm still in the Alma folder, subfolder titles. Then we've got the dashboards, and we'll open. And the most popular tab here is the one I'm in right now, the overlap P and E. It's overlap physical and electronic. So I see a question came in. I'll get to it after this one. So what this tab does here is it states the same work, and I'll explain what I mean by work in a moment, exists with both physical and electronic inventory. And I can also say when was the last loan date of the physical. And then again, we have candidates for the deselection or the weeding. So for example, here, I will leave the defaults. It hasn't been loaned for the last 5 years. And that's both the last loan date, the loan in-house, and the loan not in-house. and I can determine what is the same work via the overlap by field that I'm in right now. So we can compare by the normalized title. That means by the title, where we take the entire title, make it lowercase, get rid of punctuation, and then compare them. Then we can do it by ISBN or ISSN or the OCLC control number, which is in the 035A. Or my favorite, and I think this is the most accurate, the title, author, combined, and normalized. And we'll see what that does in a moment, but I'll explain first. It takes the first 100 characters of the normalized title, then it adds to the end of that the first 4 characters of the author. So it's better than just using the normalized title because there might be 2 titles by the same author. The ISBN and the ISSN in the 035, from our experience, and I know people may have other theories, from our experience is not really a useful way to do it because you might have a record with the hardback and another one with the paperback and another one someone copy cataloged and left it in the subfield Z instead of putting it in the subfield A. In any case, you can use whichever one you want. We're going to use right now the author, title, combined, and normalized. Then I'll say, again, I'll use the HQ. So I'll say LC classification code is HQ and OK. And let's take a look at what we've got here. So this is giving us all titles that have inventory, both electronic and physical, and the physical hasn't been loaned for at least 5 years. So let's find an example here where we can see really what is the title, author, combined, and normalized. Here's a nice example. You can see the author here was slightly different. It was cataloged twice as Let's Go Nancy and once as Let's Go Nancy author. But it's normalized as the title, which got rid of the exclamation mark and the colon and put it here and then added the name of the first 4 characters of the author. So we're sure we're getting the same one. Sometimes, here's another author. This author, it's obviously the same author because what are the chances of different Penny James writing the same exact title? And this one has a date and this one doesn't. But it's the same author and it found the title. And there's a lot of different examples like that when going through. This one, it looks like we can't see the difference, but it might be that there was a space somewhere. Here again, one of the authors was written with an author after it. Here, you can see this one was capital. This one was not capital, but they're the same. This one is also the same, but it doesn't have the colon at all. So we have case differences and we have punctuation differences, but we know it's the same record because we've got all the same author here. Let's take a look at this one. So this one apparently has 2 electronics and 1 physical. If we go up to that column header, that's the electronic and the physical. Let's go take a look at that. Okay, so let's do an all title search. We're going to do an all title search because we want to be able to find out the physical and the electronic. So I'm just going to paste that title in there. Okay, so what do we got here? The first one has electronic, activated from the community zone. The second one also has electronic, not activated from the community zone, what's called a local portfolio. And then a physical one. So 2 electronics and 1 physical. The physical hasn't been loaned for at least 5 years. Perhaps a candidate for deselection. Let's take a look at just one more example. Let's just scroll through. I'm randomly going to scroll and grab one. Here we go. Uh, let's take a look here. Pop into Alma and so this has electronic, activated from the community zone, and physical. Again, it hasn't been loaned for at least 5 years. Okay, I see a chat came in. Let me take a look. Someone says, when I doesn't get any results for this, is it possible that there is not enough data? We use Alma since middle 2022. It's possible, but it doesn't matter when you use Alma from because you have migrated data, I assume. Or you can answer here in the chat that you don't have migrated data and you only have data that you have entered since middle of 2022. In any case, if you want to check why you don't have data, you can run it with no criteria. In other words, let me scroll to the bottom here, click return, and that will bring me back. If you run it with nothing filled in at all, then it should give you everything, which could be quite a bit. So let's see here if we say, I won't fill in anything, but on my environment, it might take a very long time. But that's a way you could test it because now we're doing the list with no filters at all. So it's basically checking everything in my institution. And as you can see, it's taking a very long time because there's no. Does that answer your question? Okay. So we will move on. So that's the title level overlap analysis. There's another tab here which is worth looking at, and that's the inventory breakdown. Again, I'm not going to go through every tab. However, the inventory breakdown here on the all the way to the right gives a overview of the inventory I have in my institution. So I have, as you can see by the various colors at the bottom, there's also a table. I have 3 million active titles. That means bibliographic records. 1 million physical items, or actually not physical items. I have 1 million, it says here, number of titles with active physical items. That's a bibliographic record that has physical items. My total number of physical items is going to be higher because there may be records that have multiple physical items. This is just the number of titles that have a physical item, at least one physical item. This is the number of titles that have at least one electronic portfolio. This is the number of titles that have at least one digital inventory. When in this environment, I don't use digital. So if we look at the bottom here, we've got all of the explanations of what they are. So it's just giving an overview of what do I have in my institution. Okay, let's now make a report. Let's say we were talking about the missing items previously. And let's say now we want to know which items have been declared missing for at least 6 months. Because if an item is missing for 6 months, or we could say a year, we could say 6 years, but if it's been missing more than a specific amount of time, then chances are we can just already get rid of it or replace it. So let's take a look at that. We're going to create a brand new report now. And we're going to use a document which is in a certain directory here. I'm going to send the directory to everybody just so everybody's got it. You may be familiar with a page that we mentioned last time, which has various how-to documents and explanatory documents on Alma Analytics here, and I'll send that out to everybody in the chat. So let's go back to the chat, and everybody's got that page. Okay. Now, let's go here. Oops, sorry about that. Here. So we're going to be looking at one now, which is, just so you can see, we're going to look at this one. How to create a report of all items which have been declared missing for longer than 6 months or longer than 6 months ago. And I've already got the document ready here. So let's just take a look at that. Declared, here we go. So first of all, we're going to start in the physical item subject area. And I think everybody is already aware of how the missing occurs, but let's just refresh for everybody. It's possible to make an item be declared missing or lost. Lost can be determined via a profile, or you can do this manually. So an item, if I would say here, toggle missing status, then this item would become missing. If we just couldn't find it in the institution, we don't know where it is, we could right here make it missing. And we want to know which items have been missing more than a certain amount of time. So let's start. We'll create a new analysis, and we'll choose the physical item subject area. Here we go. And then we'll start choosing which fields we want. So let's say we want here the modification date, the physical item modification date, because the last time it was modified was when it became missing. Because once it's missing, typically, I don't want to say you can't, but there is a way to get around it. It doesn't get modified again. And then we'll get the barcode, we'll get the title, and anything else we want. Maybe we want the location name, maybe we want the permanent call number. In any case, the main thing we want is the modification date, the barcode, and the title. So we'll say we want the physical item details and modification date. So we'll say modification date. And I'm also going to put in the process type date just for a whole nother reason. Let's say we want the barcode. Let's say we want the title from the bibliographic details folder. Here's the bibliographic details. And here's the title. And let's see what else we said we want. We could put in the permanent call number. We could put in the location, not critical. Once we have the barcode, we have something unique. So we're going to have one per line. But let's put in the call number just so we got another field here. So we'll say, I could even look here, call number. We'll get the item call number. Okay. So now we want to say, we know that the status is missing. So first of all, we need to filter by that status. So that's the process type from the from the physical item details folder. So if we say here that we want the process type, I'm also going to give the, I already got the process type date. Okay. Process type. And we could use here the process type date, but let's say we want the process type, first of all, to be filtered by, we'll get those that are missing right now. Then we can say we want the modification date filter to be greater than or equal to and we'll say 6 months ago. Later, we're going to hard code this. I mean, not hard code it. We're going to put it in SQL so that every time it will be 6 months ago without a hard coded date. So 6 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, would be August, correct? Okay, August 2022. And let's take a look at what we've got now. Let's go check the Word document, see if we got everything here. Yeah, looks like we did. So let's go take a look. So it's giving us everything that is lost where the modification date was at least 6 months ago. And again, we could say whatever we'd like here. We could say 2 years ago, etc. But these have been lost for 6 months. Now, you'll notice that the modification date and the process type calendar are usually the same. And I'm going to explain why they're only usually. It is technically possible to modify a missing item because you can still put it in a set and you can run a update physical items job on it. Typically, it's not. So we could use, you see, this is the same, this one's the same, this one's the same. Then suddenly it's different because these items apparently were updated by another job afterwards. Usually they're the same. This is the same here, here. So we could do the same thing we just did. Instead of using the modification date, we could use the process type date calendar. And that would be, let's even go take a look. If we say we want process type date and we want Alma Analytics physical items, let's go see what it's going to tell us. Okay. This is simply another way of getting a more exact date. So that's going to be process type date. The date that the process type was changed. So that's why we'll use that now. But first, I wanted to show the relationship of it to the modification date. So we're back in the criteria tab now. And instead of doing this on the modification date, we'll do it on the process type. Now, it's possible in Alma to use SQL to make the date be a dynamic date. In other words, saying 6 months ago or a year ago, because I used a hard coded date now. And that means if I run it tomorrow, it's 6 days and 6 months and 1 day ago. And if I run it next week, it's 6 months and 1 week ago. So for that, I can say filter is greater than, is less than, whatever. And then say convert this to SQL. Now I'm going to write the formula here, and then I'll show where you can see a whole list of these various formulas. So I'll say here timestamp add SQL TSI month -6 from the current date. We're going to be using this current date a little later also when we start talking about the loans. Okay, so let's say okay. Let's go to the results. Let me make sure I did that right. Okay, I think I got an extra space there. Hold on. We'll see in a minute. Meanwhile, let me show you this same page where previously, sorry about this, where I had showed these presentations. So there's a presentation here that shows how to use the timestamp add parameter to retrieve by today minus X. And it gives all kinds of examples by month, by year, by date, in the future, in the past, etc. So let's come back and see what's happening here. Okay, there we are. All right, so the process type GAT calendar is always going to be more than 6 months ago. So this, for example, let's go take a look at it. This has been missing since 2017. Perhaps it's time to fully withdraw it. Now, You might say, well, what is it bothering anybody? It's giving incorrect statistics. And while it's possible to not publish them to Primo, it's possible to say, I don't want to publish the missing ones. If you do publish it to Primo, then people are going to be getting uh, things that are missing. So it's just a method of keeping the catalog up to date. You can see it's been missing since 2017. Okay, I think now, considering we're exactly halfway done, we will, I want to show one more here, actually. Then we'll go to fulfillment, because there's another one here which is extremely useful. And this one is called how to, let me just make this a little smaller here. And someone said, what about life cycle active? You're correct. I should have, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Sorry about that. Thank you for pointing that out. To make this report more accurate, I should have here said physical item details, life cycle, equals in repository, because I could theoretically here be getting, not even theoretically, it's quite a good chance. I could be getting deleted ones. In fact, I am. So let's come back here to the criteria and say life cycle filter is active. Thank you for pointing that out. So now I've got only the active ones. So this is more accurate. The one that we checked did exist in Alma, so it wasn't deleted. There's still quite a bit here. We still got our 2017 ones here. Okay. Now, as you may know, or as I'm quite sure you know, but I'm just going to state it anyway, in Alma, there are formats on the level of the bibliographic record, and there are formats like this bound issue here on the level of the item. So, for example, if I have this catalog of summer exhibition, this is considered a journal. And the reason it's considered a journal is because in Alma, there are 6 in the world by Library of Congress. There are 6 bibliographic formats. If I do an all title search here, we'll see them. And they're built according to a combination of the LDR and the 008. And these are the material types right here. I see here there's more than 6. Yeah. Then we have physical items. So this one here is a book. And if I look at this item, it's probably also a book, but it might not be. And yeah, let's say edit item. It's a book. But there are cases where there might be a journal that has a material type book. So a way to clean up the catalog is to find those records. Now, I'm going to do a quick search here and say, now the formats are BK, visual material, mixed, and I'll say type, Alma, Ex Libris, material. Okay, so here, all right. Let's take a look at how we determine that. This isn't part of the analytics, but this is just because we're dealing with it now. So the scope of the bibliographic format, these are the types of 7, excuse me, not 6. And this is how they're determined. If the leader position 7 is one of these, then it's a book. And the leader position 6 is this. So a book, it'll be by default, if there's nothing else, it'll be considered a journal, the code being continuing resource, If LDR position 6 is A and LDR position 6 is 7 is B or I or S. So we can do an analytics report to see which of these are strange or not correct. And again, on that same page, we've got a document describing how to do this, and I will open the document here. How to identify the mismatches between the bibliographic format or bibliographic material type and the physical item material type. So we'll make a report in the physical item subject area, and we'll include the material type from the bibliographic and from the physical items, and then we'll get number of items in repository. Because we're getting number of items in repository, this time we won't have to filter by life cycle active, because from the beginning, we're filtering only by physical items, which are in the repository. So we'll go to the physical items subject area, create a new report, a new analysis to be more exact. And we'll say physical items. And let's say, and I'm going to do a search just because it's faster than scrolling through the tabs. So if I put my mouse on a field that I searched for, it tells me the directory it's from. So that's from the physical item details. Double click that and it will go in. This is from the bibliographic details. And then I'll also get the physical item details, the number of items in repository. And let's take a look. Just go straight to results. I think that's all we wanted. Yes. Okay. Now we could, let's let it finish and then we're going to show something. Now from these titles, I don't know if this is the physical item or the bibliographic material type. I do know because of the value, but we can rename them. So I'm coming back to the criteria tab. If I want to rename one of these, we can click the cog wheel, edit formula, custom headings, and I'll say this is the physical item material type. I'll do the same thing here. I'll say edit formula, custom headings. That means I don't want the default. And I'll say this is the bibliographic material type. Now let's see. So what do we have here? An atlas. Okay, an atlas could theoretically be a book or a map. But let's say bound issue. Now this is strange. We have a bound issue with material type for the book, for the bibliographic record as book. That sounds a little strange. Let's see issues. Now this is strange. We have issue and book. Now it could be that it really is a journal, but it wasn't cataloged properly. Or it could be that it really is a book and someone put in the wrong physical item. Let's go take a look. So I can filter now just by that. I'll say I want issue and book. So we want physical item material type filter equals issue. And we want this equals book. Because these would be mismatches. Okay, in order to know what they are, let's put in the barcode. So we can go see them in Alma as well. And I think I'll throw in the title as well. Now, because I have the barcode in here, I'm going to say that the number of physical items Or I could do many. Let's say we want the barcode filter not null. We had some cases where there was no barcode. Let's say the same on the title. Okay, so this should now be giving me all of those with a mismatch, issue and book. So let's take the first one. Byzantine Empire on the eve of the Crusades. That doesn't sound like a journal to me, but it has a physical item material type, book. So let's now pop back into Alma. And let's go look at that. We'll say physical items, or let's say physical titles. Barcode. Boom. Okay, so this is probably an error. It's probably a mistake in the physical item because it really is a book. The Byzantine Empire on the eve of Crusades. If we were to go in here and take a brief look, that looks like a book to me. It's not a journal. And if we say, however, items, edit, it's got a material type issue. Probably a mistake. And then you can make a set of all of these. It's possible to make a set from an analytics report in various ways, and then run the update physical items job and fix them. Now I see a question came in. Let's go take a look at the chat. Can you perform a count function on that report to know how big the number of mismatches is? Yes. There's a few ways. And on that same page, there's let's go to the page there. Here we go. So there's one here, how to use R count to display the total number of rows in an analytics report. That's one way. Let's do an example. So we'll come in here. Let's say I want to know how many there are here. Now, in this case, it might be easier to use the number of items in repository because then I'm getting an accurate number. You see, sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's 1. I could filter here by 1. Sometimes it's 0 because we're displaying the title and there could be one title with multiple barcodes and only one barcode is wrong. So we'll say number of items in repository filter is equal to 1. Then if I want a count of all of these physical items, I could do a count of this measure here. And that would be done via a performance tile. Here I can say performance tile. I clicked new view, tile. When a new view is added, it automatically goes to the bottom. I'm going to take that tile and move it to the top. So first I'm going to drag it to the side, scroll all the way up, and then drag it to the top and edit. So let's say now we want to use the measure called number of items. Let me get out of here. Criteria results tab. So inside, I edited the table by accident instead of oh, I added a title, not a tile. Sorry about that. Performance tile. I added a title. Sorry. Give it a minute. Here we go. Now we'll drag it to the top. Okay, so it's telling me 983. I'll make this wider so we can read the whole thing. If we click here, view properties, we can make the width 300 instead of 100. So that means that's telling me there are 983 items. Now, there's another way to get the number of rows in a report. And I want to go on to the fulfillment, though. We've got a half hour left. So there's a document there. Again, I sent out the link to that page. And the document is called How to Use the R Count to Display the Total Number of Rows in an Analytics Report. So you could do a count either way. All right. Let's go to the chat. I see another chat came in. To everyone. Okay. Okay. When someone asks if the fact that I was using there the number of items in repository, if that's the same as filtering by life cycle as active, yes. If I'm saying number of items in repository here, I don't need to filter by life cycle as active. This one, deleted and in repository, that's all items. So this one is pre-filtered by life cycle equals active. Okay, let's move on to the fulfillment. I mean, we could speak all day here about the physical items. We could speak all day about everything, but let's move on. Okay, so fulfillment now. Same thing here. Let's start with the out-of-the-box reports and dashboards. So I'm going to stay here inside Analytics. We'll click Catalog. And we'll navigate to the Alma folder and to Fulfillment and to Dashboards. And this gives us the default dashboards. There are 3 default dashboards. And let's start with the loans, returns, and overdue dashboard. So let's say open on that. And okay, let's say here, one moment, please. Oops. Let me send out the link to this page again. Somebody asked. Okay, right here. And boom. Okay. So what do we have here? As it states, the loan was made in the last 365 days. This is a list of overdue items. If we were to make a list of overdue items and not filter, and this is in many institutions, maybe not your specific institution, but many institutions, there are items that are overdue for a very long time, and apparently the institution isn't interested in doing anything with them. Maybe they just say, okay, keep it, or they consider that a location. Very often there'll be a lecturer or a professor who has 50 items on loan and he keeps them in his office and they're way overdue, and the institution just says whatever. So in order to get an accurate amount, an accurate list of the overdue items, this one by default is saying the loan was made in the last 365 days. The due date is yesterday or earlier, meaning it's overdue. And the item has not yet been returned, meaning it's still an active loan. And then here we can filter by all different ways. I'm going to say, for example, I want the central library. So apply. And now I'm getting, just for the central library, all of the items overdue for the central library. And then once I'm in here, I can export this, for example, here. I can say page options, export to Excel, and export it to Excel. Let's export the current page just to see what happens there. Here we go. And let's see the other ones. Then I've got a list here of all of the overdue items. I could also save this report locally and make a scheduled report. We're going to be talking about the analytics objects in a future session. Analytics object includes a scheduled report, so someone can get this by email every day, every week, every month, whatever. Then we have loans by CircDesk. And this will give an indication of where loans, where staff should be located. Where are most of the loans coming from? Which circ desks? Same thing with the returns. And then we have loans by hour, which is very useful because that can give us an indication of how much staff should be allocated in different places. So here we see the majority of loans are between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. If we look at these here, from here to here, this looks like the majority. 7 a.m., there were a few, even 11 p.m. Okay, and this again is in the last 365 days. So that's the loans, returns, and overdue. Pretty straightforward. And let's move on. So let's see the reports that are making this. So we'll say catalog again. And if I come one level up, I'm clicking the icon, the third from the left on top. And under reports, these are all of the reports which are in those dashboards. So we had one called overdue items. Here it is. I can take this and let's say I want to change this to be called overdue items in the central library without patron information. So I'll say save as, and I'm going to get an error message, but I want to ask why. On purpose, I'm doing this. I'm going to get an error message. So I opened it up under Alma Fulfillment Reports, and I'm saying overdue items in Central Library. More than 30 days overdue. Okay, and I'm going to save it just to see what's remembered from last week. I'm going to try to save that. How come I'm getting this message? Let's see. I'm going to go to the chat. Who wants to tell me why I'm getting this access denied for user to path shared Alma fulfillment reports? Let's see. Chat. Anybody? You can't save to a shared folder. Photo is read only. You are not allowed to write in the Alma folder. Okay. People remember from last week. Great. Because we said the Alma folder is the read only folder so that you don't change the reports and dashboards that we supply. So I'll save it somewhere else. I might save it in the name of the institution. I might save it in the My folders until I'm all ready and then put it somewhere else. I'll put it in the My folders for now. Okay. And let's see. So now I want to change this. I want to remove the patron information. So we'll say, I don't want the user primary identifier, and I don't want the last name, and I don't want the first name, and I don't want the preferred email. And I'll say library name filter equals the central library. And I'll say days overdue filter is greater than or equal to 30. Okay. Okay, so now the days overdue is always more than 30. I can remove this section here because that's no longer the case. I changed it. So now we've got days overdue, the barcode, loan date, due date, days overdue. So if today is February 21st and this was due December 22nd, that's 61 days ago. We got 31 days in December, 61 days ago. And we're going to look more into that days overdue in a moment. So we've taken now a report from the default out of the box report and changed it to be unique for us. which is easier in many cases than making your own report. Okay, let's move on. So let's say I want to know now the most requested items. And that would be useful because that means they're highly used, because not only are there a lot of loans, there's a lot of requests on them. So that means, for example, maybe I want to change the fulfillment unit terms of use to be loaned for less time, or maybe I want to purchase another item. We always have to look at what is the purpose of these reports, because sometimes people get a little carried away. It's fun to make the analytics reports, but we need to remember, why are we making this? Is it just an academic exercise to see how we can make the report appear differently, or is there a real business case for it? So here, the real business case is we want to see what are the most demanded items, and then perhaps change the fulfillment unit rules or purchase more items. So it's useful for collection management, for many things. So let's make a new report here. We'll say create report, or create analysis to be more exact. And let's say we want the fulfillment subject area. And we're not going to look at the number of requests, but rather the number of loans that originated from the requests. In other words, we have a measure here of loans that were from a request. Loans from hold request. So these are not just the number of loans, but the number of loans that the origination of them was that the user made a hold request on it. So we've got that in there. Then let's put in the MMS ID in the title, just so we have some specific information. And we'll get the title, and we'll get the MMS ID. And we're not going to put in the barcode, because this way it'll get grouped up by the title. If we put in the barcode, it'll be by barcode. And there might be one title with multiple barcodes, and we want it to be grouped by title. And let's say we want the loan date just in the past year. So here we don't have to use SQL to get last year, because within this loan date folder, and many of the date folders, and all of the date folders, anytime there's a folder called something date, we have a date filter. And here we can say, for example, the loan date is equal to, let's say, the last 365 days. And I don't need to display that. It's enough that we're filtering. So I'll say delete. So now I'm not displaying it, but I am filtering by it. And while we're already here, let's sort it descending. So here, if I want to sort descending, I go to the criteria tab. I'll click this cogwheel, and under sort, we'll say sort descending. That way we'll have the largest numbers on top, so that we'll have the most requested items on top. Okay, so all we're filtering by is the loan date, and we're displaying the number of loans that originated from a request. Let's go to the results tab and see what we got here. Okay, so we got thematic analysis, a practical guide. In the last year, it was loaned 47 times from a hold request. Just out of curiosity, how many times was it loaned not from a hold request? 51. That's a popular item. So it was loaned altogether 51 times. 47 of those times was from a hold request. 3 times it was just loaned without a hold request. So that's a very popular item. If we wanted, we could theoretically come in here, MMS ID, and say physical items Okay, so this, for example, even now it's on loan. It's always on loan, apparently. So this barcode, there's a utility. We could see, perhaps now is not the time to go in and do that, but there is a utility to be able to see what is the policy on an item. I mean, you could actually go and try to loan it to someone, but you could go in and check it. So right now, we may want to consider on this item, on these items, maybe making the loan policy be shorter, maybe getting another item, because in 365 days, there were 47 items, 47 loans from a hold request. That's quite a bit. And there may have been people who said, oh, I don't want to make a hold request. I need it now. Let's do another homemade report. Let me go look at the chat for a moment. Someone says, we are a consortium IZs with 9 IZs and 1 NZ. Is it possible to configure the IZs so that when adding reports to the analytics objects list, reports in the NZ are available to select first? No. You can't make a analytics object in a member institution that is accessible to a network zone. However, I will point you to a place here on this page that I sent out twice where we have done significant work for network zone consortia. There's a whole section here where member institutions can access reports in the network zone. Member institutions can access electronic resource data and analytics from the network zone. You may want to look here, but if I understand your question exactly, the answer is no. Okay, let's move on. Is there a way to display the report search criteria? Let's wait on that one in the report output. I'm going to copy that one to the side here. You could always put it on the top. Someone says, is there a way to display the report search criteria in the report output? You could. You have to think, though, is your title not specific enough? But I could say here that, I mean, in this case, all I'm doing is loan date filter is equal to that. If I were to just take this so I can copy it, I could come and put this in the results. There's something called a narrative. We're going to speak about this in a future session, but I'll just point it out here. Then we'll make one more report. We still have 11 minutes. So here I could add something called a narrative. Under other views, there's something called a narrative. And here in the narrative, I'm going to take this and move it up. I'm going to drag it all the way up. First, I'll drag it to the side because it's easier for scrolling. Then I'll put it on top, and I can edit this narrative, edit view. And it normally, by default, will give one row for every row in the table. I'm going to say one row to display. I'm going to say it's HTML. And I could say here, for example, div align equals left. I don't have to use HTML. And I could say I want it bold, and I could say font size equals 3. And then I can say this report filters by that. Close that. Close my bold. Close my font. Close my div. And this will give me a preview. Yep, done. So now it's going to appear on the top of the report. And I can put here anything. I can also take here variables from the results of the table and display them. Or I could just say, I could name the report, number of loans from hold requests for loans made in the last 365 days, and then I'm covered. Okay, let's move on. Now, another very useful report that I say useful, I really mean much requested. People always want a report like this, is a list of all items which were returned X or more days after the due date. So that means they were returned X days late. Another one that people like is all loans which are now overdue. So both of those on that same page, which I've been pointing out regularly, we have a document on that. This page here, if I say here, let's do this one, overdue by more. Oops, here. Overdue by. Okay. So this one, we'll say how to create an analytics report of all loans which are overdue by 30 or more days. So we're going to make this report ourselves. We had a similar report that we played around with, which existed in the defaults, and we modified it. But I'm going to say here, back to analytics. And let's say we want a new report. So we'll say create analysis. And I want to point out here a pre-made field, which we didn't always have, which makes making these reports a lot easier. So we're going to be looking at this one. All loans which are overdue by 30 or more days. Let me close the other one that we used. Okay, so we're making a new report in the fulfillment subject area. We really don't need all of these fields, but let's at least put in the due date and the return date. No, the return date will be empty because we're talking about ones that haven't been returned yet. They're overdue. So let's say we want here the due date. And let's put in here also, let's get the barcode. So I'll just look for it. That'll be easier. And let's also say we want the library, the location, and the title. Library, location. Library is enough. Title. We want the title from the bibliographic details folder. And that should cover it. We have many more details here, borrower's first name, last name, preferred email, etc., but we really don't need to display those. And we want only active loans, ones which haven't been returned. So the end of the loan details, we have a loan status, and we want those that are active. We could also say return date is null, but it's easier this way. So under loan details, there's a loan status. If it's active, it means it hasn't been returned yet. So we'll filter by the active. Okay. Then we'll say, let's see here. So we filtered by active. And let's also filter that the due date filter is more than 30 days because we want ones that are due at least 30 days ago, at least 30 days. So under due date, we've got this due date filter. And we'll say here, let's even say more than 30 days. Let's go crazy and say a week. I mean, a year is equal to is in, let's say 2 years ago. Now, I don't need to display the loan status because they're all active. I don't need to display the due date filter. I have the due date. That will suffice. Let's go to the results. While we're looking at the results, let's see here. Okay. Save it. Okay, so fine. Let's go take a look at what we got. Then I want to show something else. Okay, so all of these are due at least 2 years ago. For example, January 25th, 2021, the first one. Now within here, let me get just library name. I thought we filtered by library name, but apparently not. Let's say we want here the central library. And also we have here, okay, let's keep that for now. So this is giving us all of the items which have not been returned and have a due date at least 2 years ago, which is pretty serious. Let's just take one little example. I'll take To Live Among the Stars. And let's confirm that it really is. So we'll say back, and we'll say barcode. And this is lost. It's on loan and it's lost. So this also would have gotten us with the lost. Okay, let's see if there's any questions or comments because we have 2 minutes. I don't want to start a whole new session with 2 minutes. I'm going through the chats to see if there's any other questions or comments. It looks like I answered them all. Does anyone have a question which I didn't answer or which you didn't send in? I don't see anything I didn't answer. Let's see if anything new came in. How can I access the recording of this in the previous training session? Okay, we answered that before, but we'll answer it again. If you go into Google and you write, let's go to Google, and you write analytics become an expert, you'll get to this page. Let me just throw in an ex libris. There might be somewhere else in the world that has an analytics become an expert series. Within this page, which is where you can register for the sessions as well, you have recordings. This is last week's, the overview and introduction. So they get a recording of this session, recording of the Apex session, recording of the Americas session. And you will soon have a recording of today's session. So you can get them from this page. Anything else? Okay, I don't see any more questions. So thanks everyone for joining, and we hope to see you next week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.